Feel free to color me crazy, but the current outlook and trajectory of Cowboy football entering 2025 does not give me the warm and fuzzy feeling inside that we're going to be able to have it figured out.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we are partially brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use a code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app and get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Cowboy football entering 2025. And, of course, we know that there's a plethora of guys that are likely to be gone, right? We talked about this the other day. In all likelihood, we have to lose 25 to 30-ish dudes no matter what happens. And then we're going to have some guys like Collin Olliver, like Nick Martin, like Ollie Gordon that could come back that are likely not going to come back, meaning we're going to have a lot of other individuals step up. But the concern on this season, to me, it exacerbates the problems entering next season. We're likely going to have to lean on some iteration of the transfer portal or JUCO guys to some degree because you're not going to be able to bring in 30 high school dudes. And even if you were able to bring in 30 high school dudes, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense. The way that we have done things for years, building up from the bottom, having a core foundation of good work ethic, good family atmospheric departments in recruiting that check off all the boxes, those things are obviously very vital to the success of Oklahoma State. Anybody who financially cannot compete with the heavy hitters is going to have to kind of take some chances and try to build up their roster as opposed to implementation of a transfer portal every single year. I didn't agree, and I still necessarily, I don't know if I fully agree yet, on what Cael Sanderson is doing. He's loading up in the transfer portal every year now, essentially. So he's perfectly fine with grabbing 35 dudes each year out of the portal and bringing in 8 to 10 to 12-ish high school guys here and there. I don't think that that's the right recipe for success, but whenever you're about to lose 35, maybe 40, 45 guys, you're not really going to have much of an option, not even to take into consideration how they're going to shrink this thing down. So this is how I came up with this. Robert Allen put out a little a piece that you ought to go read on Polk's Report. And it was going over the kind of the future, but it was more entailing the NCAA, litigation that's going on lawsuit-wise and how that's going to finally get ironed out. And when it does get ironed out, then there's going to be an implementation of like $21.5 million per school that can be distributed out, amongst the different sports and different student athletes and things of that nature. But the future for Cowboy football right now looks fairly bleak. And it's not just because of the numerical disadvantage that we're going to have. And it's not just because we are going to have a handful of guys that could come back that are likely going to take their talents to the NFL. This is where it gets tricky, though, the transfer portal. I'm not saying it's going to be a mass exodus like 2022, but I think it's fair that we can all see, it's very visible, that the locker room fracturing that happened in 2022 definitely happened this season. And my personal opinion, it is because we backed the wrong dudes as coaches. And again, is that because of NIL? Are Kendall Daniels and Alan Bowman and Cole Birmingham simply out there because they are getting NIL dollars and there's people putting pressure on them to play? I would be able to say fairly confidently, I feel, that Brian Nardo is at a disadvantage. Is he in over his head? Yes. Is he having a difficult time adapting to this level? Yes. He likely needs, some more development. But at the same point in time, Mike Gundy has a history of micromanaging, right? And that kind of entails sometimes being more involved in who's going to play and who's going to redshirt and who's going to sit and who's not. The CEO approach is fine if it is working, right? You can't be the hard Nick Saban level coach without having the Nick Saban level success. This season is going to be problematic because of the numerical disadvantage we're going to have on top of the discontentment in the locker room is going to leave some guys looking for other opportunities. So we're going to have to load up in the transfer portal, whether it be, just transfer guys or some of the JUCO guys. I know from a D-line perspective up in the state of Kansas, there's a decent number of D linemen that have a lot of Big 12, D1, Big 10, SEC style offers that could be beneficial. We need some plug and play style of guys, which we're about to talk a lot more about in segment 2. But the future of Cowboy football, if you set aside stuff RA was talking about with the financial compensation of $21.5 million and how it's going to be redistributed between 105 athletes when you got to get down from like 140 dudes to 105 dudes, of course, there's going to be some issues. And of course, also, if some group feels like certain guys didn't get the right opportunities and then they feel like that they're getting shafted in any capacity, that could add to another layer of discontentment. Not to mention the fact that these guys are not unintelligent. You know what I mean? It's just they're normal dudes that have normal conversations, but they're also 6'3", 240, and run 4.5 40s. So athletically, we're a little bit different, but intellectually, they still have to go there. They have to earn a degree. They have to be able to go into the classroom and still be able to function on the football field and through practices and through injuries and things of that nature. So whenever you combine all that with the disgruntlement in the locker room because of the coaching, that's where I see the problem in the transfer portal. Because again, I'm not saying it's going to be just like 2022, but I think you could argue it will be worse than 2022 just because we know we have like 30 dudes that have to leave no matter what, unless they're going to get 7th, 8th years, which a couple of them can, including Bowman. That's just absolutely wild. But nonetheless, we are in a bad spot, in my personal opinion. And I think some of these guys making their announcements already this early when you have, preparation for the Senior Bowl that's about to pop up, it just adds another layer of uncertainty entering the season. We realistically do not know who's going to be the core group of guys that are going to be the locker room leaders and the captains on the field that are going to lead this team. We could potentially have some ideas, but we really don't know. And that's why I find this the most problematic season, which is also why I find this a big issue for Mike Gundy. Guys, like I would be insanely surprised if not the entire, but a large portion of the defensive staff is gone the minute the season's over. Now, unfortunately, I'm not hearing the same things about the offensive staff, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. It makes me kind of go back to the somewhat kiddingly, but I don't know, maybe somewhat seriously, what does Dunn have on Gundy? Is it a video of doing some inappropriate stuff in Mexico? I don't know what it is, but it doesn't make sense. There's nobody out here, not even Mike Gundy himself, that can tell me or anybody else that keeping Casey Dunn makes any sense, that keeping Casey Dunn as long as he has made any sense. There has never, not one time, been an instance of Casey Dunn being an offensive coordinator where we all could see this guy gets it. We understand what we're doing. We're going to be massively productive and successful. We're going to talk more about my disgruntlement with Gundy over the years, but I'm not just going to go on some random rant. I want to make sure it's contextualized the right way so it, chronologically makes sense. But before we do that, we have to address this future thing or potentially lack thereof and how it doesn't equal something significantly bigger than simply replacing guys on the roster. This has to come from higher up. This is the time for Casey Strum and Chad Weiberg to act in a big way. I personally do not believe if you fired Nardo and Duffy and Hammer and Paul Randolph, I don't see how that really solves anything. To me, that's almost more just like another scapegoat, kind of like Greg Richmond was. Greg Richmond clearly was not a problem. Yeah, he may have had some disagreements with how the 3-3-5 was being utilized, but at the same time, Paul Randolph is supposed to be a 25-year veteran that has been an SEC Coach of the Year, that has coached the D-line specifically for 22 of those 25 years, and we have regressed fairly significantly. We've got dudes that can literally bench 500 plus. They can squat 700 plus, but they cannot get penetration. They can't eat up double teams to free some guys up in the back, which we were able to do to some degree last year. This season is the most head-scratching thing in the world. And to think that Mike Gundy cannot see what we see, Casey Dunn is a terrible offensive coordinator. He always has been. He has a very small playbook, which might be something that Mike Gundy prefers. But you have to be able to mix and match to get the defense on their heels, and we do not do that. Casey Dunn doesn't have the ability to do that. And obviously, unfortunately, neither does Nardo. I think that Nardo needs one more year because of the young guys, because of being forced to play some of the upperclassmen that don't exactly fit what he's trying to do. But we're going to have a scapegoat. It's either Gundy agrees to some sort of buyout, or, he kind of restructures his deal and tries to run it back and prove everybody that he can still do the daggone thing. I feel like that's where we are. But I also feel like the future of 2025 does not look good. We're not trending in the right direction, especially in this playoff era. This was supposed to be the year that we were able to kind of crash the party and set ourselves up to be the kings of the Big 12 moving forward. We didn't do it. We dropped the ball. We dropped the bag after we dropped a bag on Ollie Gordon, Alan Bowman, the offensive lineman, Nick Martin, Collin Olliver, Kendall Daniels. They got paid. And we did nothing. So potentially a bunch of youth could be beneficial rolling into this next season. Another thing that could be massively beneficial for you is getting your money right today. That's right. It is money-making time with FanDuel. The Cowboys have not been giving us a lot to hammer the over on, but that's okay. The NFL Cowboys have. So whether you're trying to get squared away today with Tylan Wallace rocking the daggone thing in Baltimore, get ready to tackle the NFL action on America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if it's a winner. The FanDuel Sports App is going to give you everything you need to place bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get that tingling sensation that something crazy is about to happen, the game's about to get flipped completely on its head, you can now check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more from the same page where you place your bets from. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com today. Get started. Get that 150 bones back in bonus bets with a $5 first bet winner at FanDuel.com. Never waste that tingling sensation in the middle of the game ever again. Enjoy every moment. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sports book of the NFL. So now we get to talk a little bit more about the guys that are leaving. Obviously, Collin Olliver has taken his talents to the next level, as is Brenton Presley. Obviously, we expect Ollie Gordon to do the same thing. I don't think it would be a massive surprise if Nick Martin were to do something similar as well. So that leaves us with a lot of these gaps that are going to be filled. Obviously, we're going to lose at least six offensive linemen just due to simply graduation. Dalton Cooper, I think, due to injury, could get another season, but, he's had injuries in the past, and O-linemen that have multiple knee injuries typically have a hard time in the recovery process, so we don't even know if Dalton Cooper is going to be able to come back, nor do we know if Isaiah Glass is going to come back. Of course, I think he will. It makes sense that he does, but that's the problem, is we don't know. And with the issues that are going on in the locker room, I would imagine that a decent number of the players feel like Mike Gundy kind of abandoned the team at some point in time in the year. I know that's going to ruffle some feathers, but let's call a spade, ladies and gentlemen. If Mike Gundy saw the same thing that people that don't really pay attention to football on a daily basis, it is not difficult. It takes zero amounts of mathematics or rocket science to see the ineptitude of Casey Dunn. Yet Mike Gundy continues to keep him around, and the players understand that as well. I've said this a million times. I believe this to my core. My favorite part of coaching is all you have to do is put players in the best positions to be successful. That's it. Get them prepared, get them ready, make them confident, and then let them do their thing. You should be able to see the fruits of your labor if you're willing to put in the time. And that's another frustration. Clearly, Mike Gundy was willing to put in the time last season. This season, he didn't want to do that. He hired Sean Snyder for a reason. And that reason was for him not to have to work 13, 14 hours a day again. I said it last year. If Mike Gundy wanted to be working 13 hours a day and diving into all the position groups and being out on the field every day, he would be. But clearly, it's not really what he wants to do. And it's not working. And now that we have Collin Olliver gone and Brenton Presley gone, and I think it makes sense for Nick Martin. I think obviously it makes sense for Ollie Gordon. But then you look at, some of the guys that we think we should be able to rely on coming into the season. One of the biggest ones I would say would be Deshaun Stribling. You would assume Deshaun Stribling is going to come in and be the main guy next season as well. Cam Smith, he hasn't really progressed much from last year to this year. Kendall Daniels, I would say it's safe that we can all see that he has regressed significantly. And the reason being, as a true freshman or as a redshirt freshman, his objective was to go out there and get the quarterback. He didn't have to sift through a bunch of information. He didn't have to, do a lot of the calls. He was simply allowed to pin his ears back, go have fun, and get the quarterback. Fairly reminiscent of what we did with Collin Olliver early on as well. Whenever Kendall Daniels was asked to do a lot more, his eye discipline became a problem. And then throughout the course of the season, laziness became a problem. Lyric Rawls, he's another dude, redshirt junior, should come back, makes sense to come back, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries, and he's been shuffling back and forth between the ones and the twos. So what do we really know? Parker Robertson, he's been a very, very good fill-in this year. But does that mean he's going to be a bona fide certified starter next season? I would imagine he's an individual that would love to come back. Cael Smith, it's hard to imagine anything other than that. Logan Ward definitely ought to be coming back. It would be nice to see what DeKelvin Beeman has evolved into. We need to keep Trent Allen toting that rock, ladies and gentlemen. You have to have a Thunder package. He's the Thunder guy. As you can see right now, he deserves more carries. He needs more carries. Hopefully he continues to get more carries. Iman Oates, at times, has been one of the bright spots of the defensive line. But being a redshirt junior, is he going to be somebody that's willing to step in the role of a Colin Clay, being almost the same size as a Colin Clay? Gavin Freeman, he's going to be an integral part of the offense moving forward, as is DeJuan Lofton. They both just transferred in, so I think it's safe to say they're probably going to stick around, but you never really know, especially when there's issues in the locker room, especially if those issues equal feeling like the coaches failed them, abandoned them, neglected them, or put them in a negative spot because of some internal issues. Those things have a difficult time, staying around. What about Shotomide-King? I personally feel like we just absolutely wasted him this year. If there's going to be a wide receiver on the list that was so good that we needed to save and do a red shirt, I would have guessed it would have been Shotomide-King. But we didn't do that. Is Garrett Rangel going to be QB1? Is there going to be a big battle between him and Zane Flores and Maya Luiake-Smith? There's so many things that we just don't know that lead me to believe it's going to be more problematic. Did Noah McKinney get enough playing time to want to stick around? Did Deshaun Brown do enough or felt like he got enough opportunities doing the constant rotation with Jaleel Johnson for him to want to make the most amount of sense? Hudson Clark, the 6'2", 220-pound punter that runs a 4.59 940, he never got to use his athleticism this year. And that's not a knock. I do think that Wes Paul has been amazing, right? So you can't knock it. But as you look up and down the lineup, ladies and gentlemen, we do not know. That's the problem. I know we're safe with Zane, but we've got a lot of individuals that maybe didn't get enough opportunities to prove themselves. And I would imagine if you're any of the quarterbacks, there's no way you can be happy. Because, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that Garrett Rangel was more suited for this offense the whole time than Alan Bowman. So is Maya Luiake-Smith. And if Garrett Rangel and Maya Luiake-Smith are significantly more suited for this specific style of offense, then this is a Mike Gundy issue. I don't believe that Mike Gundy is dumb. But I also believe that Mike Gundy does watch enough film that he sees the same thing we see. So if it is any amount true that we're going to fire 65, 70% of the defense, but we might not make a lot of moves offensively, I think that should cause a mutiny, right? That should cause pitchforks and tiki torches type of scenario. Keeping Casey Dunn would be a criminal offense. And I hope and pray every day that Chad Weiberg can see that. That Chad Weiberg realizes that we are in a bad spot. And it's because Gundy put his back against the wall and gave everybody the double birds last season and the previous year He's like, I'm not going to fire people. I'm going to keep Casey Dunn. I'm going to keep all of the staff. I'm going to do what I want to do. I love Brian Nardo. I think he's a great dude, a great ambassador. He's a phenomenal recruiter. The young cats like him. The guys on the recruiting trail absolutely love him. But you got to have some fall guys. You got to have some scapegoats. And if it's not going to be Mike Gundy, and it was Greg Richmond last year, then it's got to be Brian Nardo this year, which doesn't make sense. The fall guy should be Casey Dunn. That is the most easy made decision that'll get a lot of people off of Mike Gundy's back, but he keeps refusing to do it. There's a reason. And it's not because Casey Dunn is good at his job. That Mike Gundy cannot tell anybody that Casey Dunn is here because he believes on film, in practice, that this offense is going to rock people's socks off. It's never going to happen. And Mike Gundy is the only person in the stadium that cannot see it. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me. But we have a bye week, so it might be an opportunity for you to go check out some Friends University football or concert, music, theater, whatever it is. You can get it squared away today. It is Game Time tickets. The bee's knees for everything that you need to get squared away for multiple events near you. You already know the Game Time picks makes it very easy for you to get the tickets for your favorite team or your favorite event around you without having to deal with all the craziness that typically comes with it. You don't have to search for thousands of hours and thousands of minutes for tickets. Game Time is going to help you prioritize what you need to do with the Game Time pick. It's going to make it easier for you to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it may be. The all-in pricing is going to show you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The panoramic view is the best in the business, so you know precisely where you're getting before you get there. And the Game Time ticket coverage means that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of you buying tickets with Game Time picks today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. All one word for $20 off your first purchase. The terms apply. Create that account. Redeem that code. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today because you already know what time it is. It's game time. From game time to prime time, not the Deion Sanders level prime time, but the David Taylor level prime time. He's already made some waves with some of the guys he was able to get in the transfer portal, like committee. And, of course, landing Wyatt Henderson was absolutely massive, both physically and literally. So the transfer guys that were able to come in, on top of already being pretty young as a group last season, with Dustin Plott back ready to rock and roll, it's been looking good. Now, catching the greatest scoring team in the history of wrestling, which is Penn State last year, with a lot of those guys returning, that seems like a very gargantuan task. But getting that 2 spot in year one, it's not only achievable, but the recruiting department feels the same exact way. Whether you're looking at Penn State, Oklahoma State, Cornell, Iowa, right? Those are typically right there in the top classes. But whenever you're talking about Oklahoma State versus Penn State is naturally designed to get all of the top dudes in America because they're the king of the hill at this very moment. And they did get the number 1 overall wrestler in the country, but we got D. Lockett, the number 2 wrestler at his weight, the number 3 overall wrestler pound for pound in the country. Penn State also got Marcus Blaze, which is a absolutely huge deal that we understand. They got some of their guys. But we had some flips and some prizes in there. Speaking of Cornell, who was leading the country in recruiting above Oklahoma State and Penn State and Iowa, Minnesota, the whole lot of them, we flipped Sergio Vega from them. And that dude is the number 1 138-pounder in the country. He's won multiple state titles. He's won multiple gold medals all over the country and beyond. So when you look at their class, they had the number 1 ranked wrestler in the country, number 3, number 16, number 18, number 42, number 47. Oklahoma State had the number 2 wrestling in the country, number 5, number 7, number 24, number 29, number 46. And Cody Rutledge and Austin Johnson were not part of that group, nor was Landon Robideau whenever we did some of the conversations yesterday. And we even got Ethan Teague from Tuttle, Oklahoma, had an undefeated record, 3-time state champ in the state of Oklahoma with a lot of ties. This is going to be very, very interesting to see what David Taylor and Cowboy Wrestling are able to do, because obviously we're already right there with Penn State. We literally recruited neck and neck with Penn State to end up with, it looks like, the number 2 class in the country, when it looked like Cornell was going to be the team to beat. When you have a massive flip like Vega, especially here towards the end, that's huge. And you now know Penn State is sweating. They haven't liked the hire from the get-go, and they haven't really been bashful about sharing their opinions. But the hire of David Taylor shook the earth in State College. And then getting some of the guys on staff that he was able to bring in, like Bravo Young and Thomas Gilman and Coach Jimmy Kennedy. These are dudes that were instrumental, some of them, to the success of Penn State wrestling throughout the course of the Cael Sanderson era. So now we have the blueprint for how Penn State got where they are. And then we were able to bring a lot of their guys from Penn State to Oklahoma State. And then we were able to pick off some of the dudes in recruiting that clearly they had their eyes on. Then we were able to beat some of their top guys in getting letters of intent yesterday. It's only a matter of time, if David Taylor keeps this up, that we catch Penn State and we go back to being what Oklahoma State wrestling always has been and what always should be, which is the premier team in wrestling. If you want to say that there's a budding rivalry now between Oklahoma State and Penn State, I absolutely love it. Sign me up. I'm all here for it. And you do know that there's got to be a slight piece of David Taylor that would love nothing more than to shake the earth up year one and legitimately have an opportunity to win a national title. If you score enough points, you're going to have the capability to do anything. And this recruiting class shows, on top of the guys that we're able to bring in, that attracting the top talent to the most tradition-rich wrestling program in the country is not going to be easy. And just like Steve Lutz seems to want to recreate some of the things that were done on Gallagher-Iba floor when he was a coach, when Eddie Sutton's name is on the court, that guy made the mold after Henry Iba of what things should look like at Oklahoma State. Steve Lutz at least is bringing that dedication to intensity back to the court of Gallagher-Iba. But David Taylor is going to raise the bar for attendance in wrestling, because competing for national titles is the name of the game. And we used to be able to count on a couple sports like golf, cross country, and wrestling to have the opportunity to compete for national titles. And now we have softball that's right in the thick of winning the national title races consistently. So just like it's only a matter of time that Kenny Gajewski has Cowgirls playing for something that major, David Taylor is well on his way to having Cowboy Wrestling doing the same exact thing, competing for national titles every single year, because that is the expectation. And it should always be the expectation here. Just like football's expectations need to be higher than just 7-8 wins a year. No matter who you are, no matter what era of the fan base you're from, if you watch the 0-11, 1-10 years, I'm sorry. But in this transfer market and NIL era, you cannot afford to keep sliding backwards. And your coaching has to be part of your uptick. And if the coaching is literally dragging you down and you know you're having to win and play in spite of coaching, it can kill you. It can kill a team. It can kill a locker room. It can kill a roster. We're already in rebuild mode, and rebuild mode might be getting a lot worse soon. Hope not, but the current state of things under Mike Gundy, to me, does not look good, and I think the sentiment is pretty synonymous. All righty, y'all. So we're going to have for this one right here. You know I love you. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. Like it if you liked it, that whole thing. My podcasting people, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, my taters.